When I was at university, I was not bad at doing assignments, but I was absolutely atrocious at doing them on time. If somebody gave me 8 weeks to do an assignment, I would spend the first 7 weeks and 6 days doing absolutely nothing. Just nothing. Chilling out, going to the pub, having a good time, man. Then the night before it was due, I would spend 12 hours doing enough Dexies and Mother to take down a small village. The next morning, I would have that assignment done. I'd be on no hours sleep and I'd hand it in and I learned nothing. That's what I learned. I learned that I can procrastinate as much as I want. But the older I get, the more I realize that doing that is so unsustainable. Fast forward a couple of years and I've had to tackle that issue. And that is the issue that I'm going to try to tackle in this video. Procrastination. And just as a disclaimer, this is only what's worked for me. It might not work for you. I'm not an expert. I'm just me with a friggin' YouTube account. So remember that as you watch this video. Alrighty, let's get into it. Part 1. Procrastination is a symptom. Procrastination is something that I think non-procrastinators, if that's even a real category, often view as just laziness. But what I've found to be more true is that procrastination is a symptom of a wider issue. These could be issues like perfectionism, fear of failure, fear of criticism, avoidance, low self-esteem, a tendency to self-defeat, depression, anxiety, trouble focusing, all sorts of really real issues that trouble us at our core. And sure, one of the ways that they might manifest is you put off stuff that you know you have to do. You put off the gym, you put off changing careers, you put off work, you put off having kids, whatever it is, we're doing it tomorrow. For example, somebody who fears failure might not set up their dream business because they know that doing that means that they are one step closer to their inevitable bankruptcy. A perfectionist might not start their novel because typing means that they're going to ruin that perfect blank page. And a self-defeatist musician might look at the hundreds of thousands of musicians releasing music every day and just say, what's the damn point, man? What is the damn point? Ultimately, when we are looking to tackle procrastination, what we're actually looking to do is to tackle the root issues that cause the symptom of procrastination. But I have found that doing this is really hard, and ironically, a lot of procrastinators are gonna do it tomorrow. Instead, the approach that has worked for me is to tackle the symptom first, then the root issue. This then creates a clear framework for you to tackle the root issue. I know it seems counterintuitive, but it's just what's worked for me. So it's a 2-step process. Get on top of the procrastination, then understand why you do it and get on top of that. So how do we do it? How do we start tackling procrastination? Part 2. Micro habits mean macro actions. Something that I've found that's easy to believe if you're not in a great mindset is that you have a fixed amount of energy. Like for example, if you only had say 50 units of energy, you're like, all right, I spend 10 here, 15 here, 15 here, and another 10 there. You know, if you use all your energy on your friends and family, you're worried that you won't have enough for work, that kind of stuff. But what I've found to be more true is the more you use, the more you have. It's like the gym. People who go to the gym a lot, the more that they go, the more they get freaking yoked. And the best explanation that I've found for this is this Zen Buddhist quote that I mentioned a couple weeks ago on this channel. How you do anything is how you do everything. It's one of my favorite quotes, and what I interpret it to mean is the way that you act in small situations, usually non-consequential situations, is the way that you will act in big and often consequential situations. So I'll give you an example. I don't know if you saw The Last Dance on Netflix. This isn't a spoiler, but there's a scene where Michael Jordan and his entourage, I guess, are in the locker room and they're playing this game where they've got to throw a coin into a cup. And Michael Jordan is so freaking competitive.
Hey, your stuff rolls.
And what it shows is that the way he does that small non-consequential thing is exactly how he plays basketball. This spiraling from micro pattern to macro pattern is where a lot of self-help axioms come from. Making your bed at the start of the day is something that kickstarts that feeling of accomplishment, pride, and integrity. Having a cold shower reinforces that message that I do hard things even though they suck. And sticking to a good diet beyond the health benefits is a great way to instill discipline in the rest of your life. That kind of stuff, you know what I'm talking about, man. When we look at these micro versus macro patterns, if we put procrastination as a macro pattern, what is the micro thing that we can do that will spiral up and stop us doing this? Part 3, the rule. It's called the 2-minute rule. Put simply, if something takes less than 2 minutes, do it immediately. If it takes longer than 2 minutes, schedule it. So I first heard this in a podcast and it was said so flippantly, almost like it was an obvious insight. Somebody was like, so what are some things you can do to live a happier life? And the person, the podcast guest, was just like, oh, well, obviously there's a 2-minute rule, you know, do something immediately if it takes less than 2 minutes. And then they went into their list of cliches, right? But I was like, hang on, hold up, you just dropped a friggin' diamond. Let's go back. So I Googled the 2-minute rule and turns out it came from this guy, David Allen, in his book, Getting Things Done. The way David Allen puts it is, if you determine an action can be done in 2 minutes, you should actually do it right then because it'll take longer to organize it and review it than it would to actually finish it the first time you notice it. I took the idea so literally because I didn't know how else to take it. I was already at home and I was like, all right, dirty dish. I'll just clean it right now. It takes less than 2 minutes. I had a phone bill to pay and I was like, all right, probably less than 2 minutes. Did it immediately. The bins had to go out and that was going to take me a total of about 30 seconds. So I took them out. And immediately I was hooked. I was so hooked, man. It just felt real good. I don't know what it was. I just liked it. So I kept it going and I've done it for about 6 months now. And these are the 2 conclusions that I have come up with. 1, it creates less clutter. On a very literal note, it creates less clutter around my house. Instead of putting like my jacket on the chair, I've started to put it into the cupboard. And from a mental point of view, it has made my to-do list so much less gnarly. I've found that my daily list has gone from 10 points to 5, and that's because 10 of those points used to be things like write back to Debbie, sign this contract, feed the basement clone, you know, normal stuff. What this felt like was way less dread and way less anxiety. There wasn't something in my brain that I'm like, okay, at the end of the day, I still have to do this, I still have to do that, because they were already done. That was awesome. Ultimately, gamifying those small little tasks and giving them a rule created a lot more space in my life. Conclusion 2, I procrastinated less. It worked. It actually did work, which is pretty groovy, right? Cool. Who would have known? The thing that I have found I've procrastinated the hardest on over the years is writing back to messages. I don't know why, it is just something that gives me so much anxiety and I just put it off and I make it future Cam's problem, but it's actually present Cam's problem, and if he doesn't do it, he gets real anxious, man. So about a week into using this 2-minute rule, I was like, all right, let's time it. Let's actually time how long it takes you to write back to this text that you haven't gotten back to for a week now. You wanna know how long it took? 45 seconds. I could have spent 45 seconds writing back to it, but instead I chose a week of thinking about it. I'm a dummy, man. I'm a big panicking dummy. Whoops. And when I hit send on that first message, I felt immeasurably relieved. How is it that we know what we have to do and we never do it? I don't know why. Whack, right? But the relief reinforced this message in my brain. If you do the things that you have to do, even though they're the things that you hate doing, you will feel relief. What we're doing here is we are creating a bias towards action instead of inaction. The more that I reinforced this Nike type message, the less that I'd procrastinate on other bigger things. Things like accounting, things like getting through the messy middle of a project or reading a 20-page contract. The 2-minute rule did exactly what it promised. It spiraled up from micro to macro and it helped me procrastinate less. But after I landed on those 2 conclusions and after I solved a few problems in my life, I found, like anything, the 2-minute rule was not perfect. About a month into using this, I got a little bit too addicted to the rule. I would see 30 little things that would take less than 2 minutes around my house and I would just do them. I'd spend the next hour doing them. And an hour is a lot longer than 2 minutes, and those hours stack up, and eventually I started using the 2-minute rule to procrastinate on doing the actual work. Oh my god, what a hot mess. So what do? How do you stop that? Part 4. The rules for the rule. Once the 2-minute rule is second nature, for me it took like about a month of using it like without exception, it is time to instill some guidelines to stop it becoming another procrastination tool. This is the system I've used. Rule 1, if you're in a flow or you're finally doing that hard and important task, do not interrupt yourself. If you do happen to be a professional procrastinator, when you do finally sit down and do that hard and important task, your brain is going to find any reason it can to not do it. And one of those reasons that might sound a little bit more valid in the moment is,
oh, remember the 2-minute rule? I see some dirty dishes. I should just go do them now, shouldn't I? It's technically good for me. It's technically me getting this work done, right?
wrong. Unfortunately, the work has to be served first in this example, and that is why I've made it its own rule. Rule 2, do the hardest thing on your to-do list first. I think it was Brian Tracy, who's one of those self-help granddaddies, who said, if at some point you have to eat a frog in your day, make it the first thing you do. Eat that frog. Gross, so gross. I find that doing the hardest thing first actually pairs really well with the 2-minute rule, because within that hard task, there will be something that takes less than 2 minutes. For me, for example, it's turning on the camera. That takes less than 2 minutes. Then next thing I know, I've tricked myself into getting the job done. I am eating that frog. Ew, still super gross. Rule 3. For the best long-term results, sync the rule up to the rhythm of your day. In my experience, the 2-minute rule has a 2-phase adoption period. There's phase 1, adoption, where you do it without exception. Your main focus is to build the habit so you get that bias towards action. Phase 2 is maturity, where you want to make sure it doesn't interrupt the actual work that you have to do. And the best way that I've found to do this is to schedule it around my body clock. So I am so much better at doing hard work in the morning. So that's not going to be when I do any of those like little tasks. And then when I'm brain dead between 12 and 3 p.m, by the way, whoever invented the siesta, friggin' genius. That's where I'm gonna switch on that no exception style. That's when I'll do all those chores and little things. We're getting technical here, but this is the best method that I've found. Part 5, bringing it back to the wider issue. Like I said earlier, procrastination is so often just a symptom of a wider issue. Once you tackle the surface habit, it might become really apparent as to why you did it. For me, what I found out was that I procrastinated because I was scared that my best wasn't good enough. To link it back to that uni assignment, if I had taken all 8 weeks to do that assignment and I just got like a 56 out of 100, then that was the best I could do. And I wasn't prepared to learn that about myself. But if I had done it in 12 hours and I got that 56 out of 100, then I was a rock star, man. Imagine getting 56 in only 12 hours. That's amazing. I didn't want to risk knowing that I was only so good with all of my effort. And that is because, to go one layer deeper, I believed that my work was my worth. In reality, this isn't true for me, it's not true for you, it's not true for anybody. We are not defined by what we can produce. But for me to realize this, I first had to declutter my life and build a better habit around those symptoms. So ultimately what I hope is that you can take something from this video to help you on that journey to find the reason that you procrastinate. Or maybe you can, just do it tomorrow. Thank you so much for watching. Hope you enjoyed that. Subscribe if you're new. If you want to support the channel, you can check out my shop, struthless.com. We got shirts, hats, all that sort of stuff. Let me know if you've also got some other tips. I'm sure there's a lot of people who'd love to read how you've gotten over your procrastination or some stuff that you're working on. And let me know what other topics you want me to cover. Anyway, that's it from me. Have a gorgeous day. Catch ya.